What's up, YouTubers? It's Matador coming at you with another World of Warcraft video. This time we are approaching the Burning Crusade. TBC Classic is about to launch, and I wanted to give you guys a preview of the talent points that you should probably be picking. Of course, you have a variety of your own choices if you decide to go with a Druid. Now, I of course played a Druid through Vanilla and TBC and every expansion throughout the entire history of WoW, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Druids. But we're going to take a look today at proper rating specs for what you should talent if you intend on raiding in the 10 and 25 man dungeons. So let's take a look. Suppose you want to go Moonkin and you want to go all the way through the balance tree. The primary purpose of the balance tree is to get down to Moonkin form, which ultimately gives you and your party members plus 5% to spell crit chance, which is awesome. Additionally, even though this doesn't help you as a Moonkin, it helps your raid, because if you cast Fairy Fire on the boss, it means everyone has an increased chance to hit that target with melee and ranged attacks by 3%, which is awesome because it means less people have to have hit on their gear, which allows them to have other things there instead. So what are we going to put our points in? Well, as with any tree in WoW, mostly you're going to go down the center, but for starters, we're going to put points in Starlight Wrath. These talents were combined in TBC, whereas they were separated in Vanilla. Then we're going to put 2 points in Focus Starlight, which increases the crit strike chance because your damage mostly comes from crits. We're going to put 2 points in Improved Moonfire because dots are now available to you to use. So the Vanilla, or I should say Classic, allowed you to have 16 debuff slots on a boss at any given time, which meant you weren't moonfiring at all. However, TBC will increase that, TBC Classic, to 40 per boss, which means you're going to have the chance to use Moonfire and Insect Swarm, possibly. Insect Swarm is awesome. It's my favorite ability ever, and I'll never forget Blizzard for taking it away. It does damage. First of all, it's a dot, but it also decreases the enemy's chance to hit by 2%, which is helpful. I loved dotting up fools with Moonfire and Insect Swarm, and then just rejuvenating myself and standing around while they beat themselves to death on my thorns. But anyway, I digress. You do need to put 1 more point in to get down to this level, and it's up to you what you want to do. I mean, Nature's Grasp is helpful, I guess, if you're running away from stuff, but you're never going to be outside in a raid setting. The better choice is probably Control of Nature, just on the off chance that you have to spam Cyclone something. Then you'll put the 1 point in Insect Swarm and 2 points in Reach, which allows you to have further range. You're going to put all 5 in Vengeance, which, just like in Vanilla, gives you more damage per crit. Celestial Focus is more of like a PvP or just soloing talent. It's not useful in raiding. Nature's Grace is useful because obviously every time you crit, your next cast will get faster, which works very well with your spam casting. So Lunar Guidance will give you more spell damage and healing per intellect, and the more intellect you stack, the more mana you get. So this is kind of a double whammy of being helpful. Moonkin are still kind of laughingly referred to as Oomkins, and so you do have to worry about your mana consumption, and there are tons of mana talents, thankfully, in TBC that you will put your points into, Moonglow being one of those. 5 points will go into the extra damage for your spells, and then importantly, Balance of Power has been added to this tree, which gives you 4% spell hit. You still have to get a total of, I'm flaking, I think it's 16 spell hit in vanilla and TBC, and so TBC gives a lot more hit to you, whereas you didn't have any in vanilla. So at least this is a solid 4 that you can take off right there. We've already covered that you need Moonkin form, and that I suggest you go with improved Fairy Fire. It doesn't do anything to help you personally, but it does help the raid. And Dream State is, again, just getting your mana back, which is important to make sure that you can continue casting. And 5 points will go in Wrath of Cenarius, which again increases your damage. It's up to you if you care to put a point in Force of Nature or not. It's not really useful. Trees are kind of annoying. They run all over creation. You can't really control them, and they don't really do a significant amount of damage, at least not in my opinion. So you'll flip over from here to the Resto tree, primarily just to get down to the mana talents. And so you'll put 5 points in Mark of the Wild, because obviously you're still going to be a buff machine as a druid, and so you want to have the top buffs. The next 5 points don't really matter because nothing here is particularly useful. Natural Shapeshifter used to be useful only because you had to shapeshift out of Moonkin form to hit Innervate, but now Innervate and TBC is actually in the balance tree or classification, so you don't even have to do that. So it doesn't really matter what you put. I'm gonna just throw 5 points into Nature's Focus on the off chance that I have to pop out and hit Tranquility. I mean, if I do that, I'm probably gonna hit Barkskin before I Trank anyway, because I'm not an idiot, but in case I wasted it on something else earlier, I mean, this just gives you a chance not to blow that cooldown by getting interrupted. And of course, the whole reason you are going down this tree in the first place is to get Intensity for a 30% mana generation. And then you have 2 talent points left. Whatever you want to do with that, I suggest putting it in Subtlety, because you're going to be causing a lot of threat with your crits. And if you, for some reason, there's another druid that already has improved Fairy Fire, I would also steal those points and put them in Subtlety. Okay? If you intend on being a total meme in TBC, you can actually tank 5-man dungeons and heroics as a Moonkin, because you do a significant amount of threat and your armor is outrageous. So in that case, you would not put 5 points in there at all. But that's the basics of being a Moonkin. All right, now let's take a look at Restoration talents. So primarily, Resto is focused around the bottom tier talent, which is Tree of Life, which transforms you into this super dopey looking tree that I just cannot stand that model. I never had to deal with it really, because I was a full PvP spec all the time, and you never take Tree of Life in PvP. But some people are obsessed with this tree form, and they love it, and they still use it today in retail. I left that on the trainer, honestly, in retail, because I don't even want this crap on my bar. But some people love it, and you're going to have to learn to love it if you intend on raiding as Resto in TBC, because you're going to be spamming HOTS on people, and that's what Tree of Life really excels at. So what are the talents you want to take? Well, you're going to put 5 points in Improved Mark of the Wild, because again, you're still a buff bot, because you're a buffing class, and so you want to get the max MOT dubs. Now, this is where it changes up a little bit from Classic or Vanilla, because before, in Classic, you were just spamming Healing Touch all the time because you were worried about pushing buffs off with HOTS, but without world buffs and stuff in TBC, the 32 cap of buffs doesn't really matter as much, so you're actually going to be focusing on HOTS because that's more relevant to you as a Tree of Life. So you can actually skip this completely and avoid all of the Healing Touch talents if you're going to be staying around as a tree. So in that case, it's kind of up to you what to put the points in. I would suggest putting them in avoiding damage from regrowth, because regrowth is going to replace Healing Touch as your go-to spell if you're a tree. You're obviously still going to be reliant on your mana, and so you want to make sure that you put 3 points in intensity to keep your mana restoration up. And then to avoid pulling aggro, you could put the 5 points in subtlety, or however many points you think is appropriate. We're going to go ahead and put all 5 in there. What's necessary, of course, is improved rejuvenation, because again, you're focusing on your hots, but we can skip the healing touch talents. Nature Swiftness is still relevant because it can be cast in Tree of Life form, but obviously you can't Nature Swiftness Healing Touch because you can't use Healing Touch in Tree of Life, but you can Nature Swiftness Regrowth, which is still helpful if you need an emergency heal. 5 points obviously go in Gift of Nature because that's just straight bonus healing. And since Regrowth is your main heal now, or your main cast time heal, I should say, you're going to put the 5 points in Improved Crit, which is a massive 50% crit chance of Regrowth, which means Regrowth should be critting pretty much anytime you cast it. Or technically 50%, but you're obviously going to have more crit than this. This is Total Spirit by 15%, which increases your mana regen, yes, but it also has an extra bonus. In Tree of Life form, you increase healing received by 25% of your total spirit for all party members, which means you're going to be in the main tank's group because you're going to increase healing on him by 25% of your spirit. So you are going to stack spirit, not intellect. You're just going to have tons and tons of spirit. Swiftmend, of course, is go-to spell for an oh crap button if you need to instantly heal someone. Natural Perfection isn't particularly great. I mean, usually I say take all the crit talents, but if you already have 50% extra crit with Regrowth, what's an extra 3%? It's not crucial, but it's still something. But HOTS cannot crit, so it's not like you're going to crit with a Rejuve or something. It's not particularly useful. Obviously, you're going full 5 into increased bonus healing, and that will open up Tree of Life, which get used to being a wacky, flailing, inflatable tube man looking tree. And ultimately, these are the points you go with. Now, you still have 19 points left. You can do with them what you want. You could go down the balance tree and give yourself some solo abilities, which I would suggest, but ultimately you're not going to get to anything particularly useful because you just don't have enough talents left to do so. There's nothing in the feral tree that helps at all, so really you could just go full resto here. And what I mean by that is saying that if you're not going to be in Tree of Life form, what are you going to be doing? Well, you're still going to be healing touch spamming at lower ranks, and so that's something you could do, is throw your extra points into the healing touch talents. That makes your healing touch faster and more efficient and gets more bonus healing. And then, I mean, at that point, you're just kind of throwing points in, to fill up the resto tree however you want. But ultimately, I mean, going full resto means going full resto in TBC. So the feral combat tree in TBC changed to kind of a more hybrid talents that allow the talents to count for both cat and bear instead of being separated, which is helpful, but there's still points that are more advantageous to cat than bear and vice versa. But there's only a few here and there that you would even mix up. Mostly it's kind of the same spec. But cat and bear both depend greatly on mangle, and you have to go all the way to mangle because this increases the damage of bleed effects. Now, it was that in a vanilla or classic, you would only use Ferocious Bite as your finisher if you were a cat in raids because there just wasn't enough debuff slots. But since TBC increases from 16 to 40 debuff slots. It means you're actually going to be using Rip as your finisher more often than not, so that you can take advantage of Mangle and get all that bleed damage on the boss, which means it's more important to take the ferocity points rather than feral regression in this first box. However, there are still times where you're going to use Ferocious Bite, like if you just luck out on your combo point multipliers and your Rip is still active and you don't want to overlap it too soon, and you'll throw in a Ferocious Bite, or a mob or the boss is about to die and you'll just Ferocious Bite them, or they're immune to bleeds or something like that. So the 5 points still are helpful in Ferocious Bite as cat form. There's nothing particularly helpful in this second row for cat. If you're soloing, then reducing chance to get seen while prowling is helpful, of course, and so is Brutal Impact to increase stun chance, but neither of these are crucial. The 3 points in Sharpened Claws is, of course, Crit Strike chance, which Crit Strike is always helpful when you're talking about melee DPS. And then you're kind of left with a choice. What do you want to do? Again, none of these are particularly helpful for cat form. The most important thing for soloing is probably just that extra movement speed outdoors. It's not like you're going to be raiding outdoors, but you know, the 30% speed increase when you're just doing dailies or something on the Isle of Keltanas will be helpful. So I suggest putting those points in swiftness. The 3 points obviously will go in Predatory Strikes. You can't really be feral without this. It increases your melee attack power by a significant amount. And Primal Fury is where they combined cat and bear talents to give you bonus effects whenever you crit. Now, shredding attacks is crucial if you're going cat form, not as crucial if you were going bear, but this reduces Shred's energy cost by 16 because Shred is still going to be your go-to ability, and in fact, power shifting, if you're a min-maxer, is still going to be your go-to thing, where you're wearing the level 40 hat that I can't remember what it's called now, to power shift and get so much energy back that you can spam Shred and repeat power shift to get those combo points again, just like you were in Classic. But even if you're not doing power shifting, it's still 18 energy off is just a significant amount, which will help you be able to press attacks more often. The 2 points in Savage Fury are important because it increases your damage, but this is only for cats. Fairy Fire Feral is not necessarily crucial because if you're bringing a Moonkin, they're the one that's going to be using improved Fairy Fire, so yours is going to be useless, but obviously I still suggest taking it because you have to put 1 point in something to get to Heart of the Wild, and so why not put it in one of the most useful solo abilities there is. 5 points obviously go in Heart of the Wild. This increases all your stats depending on what stance you're in. And 3 points in Survival of the Fittest because this is a straight 3% increase on your attributes, meaning your strength, agility, etc. You're going to put 1 point in Leader of the Pack. Of course, this is a big reason why you're there, is because it increases melee and ranged crits by 5% for everyone that's in your party. And then at this point, you're again left with a choice of what do you want to do? Do you want to put improved Leader of the Pack so that you get extra healing if anyone in your party crits, which is neat, but it's not your job to heal people. So it kind of depends on if you need extra healing or not, or if you want extra healing on yourself. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. Since you only need 1 point, my suggestion is just to throw it in Feral Charge, because there may be a situation where you have to switch to Bear and interrupt something, or get charged to an area real quick and get out of harm's way. It's just a convenient thing to have, regardless of if you're staying in cat form more often than not. You're going to put 5 points in Predatory Instincts, which obviously increases your damage. You want to take all of those kinds of talents and the 1 point in Mangle. Then we're left with 20 points left over, and in vanilla you would go over into the balance tree, but the talents that you needed have now moved into Resto. Omen of Clarity is here, and the plus 10% physical damage has moved into a merger with Naturalist, which you might not have realized if you didn't read these talents. And so these are the abilities that you want, and of course obviously Furor. If you're going to be doing power shifting, Furor and Natural Shapeshifter are important because this means you're going to have enough mana to continue shapeshifting as much as you want, and Furor means that you're going to have a base 40 energy whenever you power shift, and if you wear the Tiger's Helm or whatever the hell it's called from Leatherworking at level 40, then you'll get an extra 20 on top of that. You'll put the 5 points in physical attacks, of course, and like I said, the 1 point Omen of Clarity. So at this point you're left with 6 points. I would probably suggest, if you're going the power shifting route, to just put 3 points in intensity, which allows mana regeneration to continue, which means you might get an extra power shift or 2 in over the course of a fight if it ends up being a long fight. And then you're left with 3. The only thing that really benefits you as cat form is probably going to be Feral Instinct at this point, which means you can prowl more easily. But you could also just as easily put these points in your ability to heal, or your ability to have your party heal themselves when they crit, which would be crucial, and then throw the last point, maybe Nature's Grace or something. It doesn't really matter. If you are going bear form, of course, you wouldn't need Savage Fury, and you wouldn't need the Natural Shapeshifter talents. You could take these out and move them instead into the threat points you definitely need, and the thick hide points right there. And that's your bear form spec. Very similar to cat, although I would definitely maintain improved leader of the pack as a bear. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you enjoy your time in TBC Classic as a Druid, the best class that ever existed. Peace.